Right now, there is no Need for Speed game in development. Not coming soon. Nothing. In February of 2025, EA confirmed the entire Criterion team, the studio that has made Need for Speed since 2010, moved off the franchise to work on Battlefield. Meanwhile, a game about stealing cars and robbing banks has a car meet with time trials, drift tracks, and weekly street races, pulling in more players on a random Tuesday than NFS's entire community manages on launch day. That's not a coincidence. GTA didn't just build a racing mode, it absorbed the culture Need for Speed was built on. Here's how. Rewind to 2003, when Need for Speed Underground invented mainstream tuner culture for a generation with neon kits, body wraps, drift tuning, and an MTV-coded soundtrack that made car culture a genre on its own. But a year later, Rockstar dropped San Andreas and buried inside a crime saga about gangs in fictional California. Was a car culture subplot nobody expected, featuring lowriders on hydraulics, street races through the hood, and a radio station. Built around West Coast hip-hop that made cruising feel like the point instead of a side mode. NFS sold you a racing game with a culture attached, while San Andreas sold you a culture with racing attached. And when a mechanic lives inside a whole world instead of being the whole pitch, it becomes replaceable, but the world doesn't. San Andreas didn't just borrow street racing, it planted it inside something people already loved for 100 other reasons. Underground had one thing going for it, and that was racing. So if you didn't want to race, there was no game left. San Andreas had gang missions, heists, a flight school, and a whole state to explore, where street racing was just one more toy in that sandbox. And you could stumble into a race, lose interest, go rob a store instead, and still feel like you got your money's worth. That's the problem NFS never solved, because it needed you to care about racing specifically, while GTA never needed that. It just needed you to care about the world, since racing was already sitting inside it. And to be fair, NFS noticed the threat when Underground 2 opened its city into semi-free roam in 2004, and Most Wanted leaned even harder into an open world with cops chasing you between races. So for a minute, NFS looked like it understood exactly what San Andreas had figured out. But the series never committed, and later entries kept swinging between open-world experiments and tighter race menu structures, depending on which studio ran the franchise that year. While GTA never had that identity crisis, since every entry doubled down on building the world first and letting racing live inside it. GTA Online kept that thread alive when the 2016 import-export update turned car collecting and customization into an actual business where stealing, modifying, and flipping cars became one of the main ways players made money. But the real gut punch didn't come from a single update, it came from Rockstar building an entire building for street racers to live in. This is the strongest evidence in the whole video. In July of 2021, Rockstar released the Los Santos Tuners update, which wasn't a racing mode bolted on, but a whole social space built around the underground street racing scene from the early Fast and Furious movies before. That franchise became globe-trotting heist spectacle, and they called it the LS Car Meet. Inside, there's a test track for drifting and drag racing, head-to-head duels, checkpoint scrambles, and time trials tracking your personal best. While outside, there are over a dozen new races across the city, split between street races and cop chase pursuit races. Notice what Rockstar copied on purpose, like painted starting lines, a race starter waving you off, and a crowd standing around watching. Because that's not a racing menu, that's a recreation of an actual street racing meet atmosphere. Included, so they didn't just steal the mechanic, they rebuilt the ritual. You might think NFS still wins on car handling and customization depth, and that used to be true, but GTA closed that gap too, with new wheels, liveries, working hydraulics, adjustable ride height, and exposed engine parts, speaking the exact cosmetic language tuner culture uses. GTA built the exact fantasy NFS used to own inside a game people were already going to open anyway. Here's why that already going to open anyway part is the actual death blow. Think about how you found this topic. You searched Need for Speed, clicked an NFS video, and somewhere in the recommendations GTA showed up, so 40 minutes later you're deep into a GTA Online car meet video and barely remember clicking away from NFS at all. That's not an algorithm accident. It's the same absorption happening to your attention that happened to the genre itself, since NFS gives you one reason to show up, which is racing, while GTA gives you 100 reasons, and racing is just the one you click today. It's not just search doing the absorbing. Since car meet live streams, GTA, RP servers, and drift build showcases have become their own content category on YouTube and Twitch, with creators building channels around a car culture scene that technically lives inside a crime game. While NFS never had that layer, and its content mostly stayed limited to speedrun clips and reviews because there was no persistent social space to keep returning to. So GTA gave creators a location to build a recurring series around, while NFS only gave them a campaign to finish once. What this means for the industry is that a single-purpose racing game now competes with an open world that includes racing as a subsystem built by a studio with a decade's head start and a player base in the hundreds of millions and SPAC. That was never going to be a fair fight. EA has confirmed Criterion is now fully on Battlefield, so no NFS game is currently in development. And Unbound wasn't even the most criticized entry, but slow progression and a lack of freedom still left it with mixed reviews, which means NFS didn't lose because it got worse, it lost because the thing it was selling stopped being scarce. Connecting the pieces, San Andreas proved street racing works better as a feature inside a bigger world than as the whole pitch. While GTA Online proved you could keep expanding that feature for over a decade without releasing a new game, and viewer behavior proves the same principle plays out in how we consume content about these games, since people click for the specific thing and stay for the world built around it. NFS spent 2 decades trying to be the best racing game, while GTA never tried to be a racing game at all. It built a world good enough that racing became one more reason to never leave. And with no new NFS in development and a car meet still running since 2021, that's not a temporary lead. That's the race already decided. There's a broader pattern here that goes past these two franchises. Look at how many single-purpose genres have quietly folded into open-world games over the last decade. Racing sims compete with GTA. Heist thrillers compete with GTA. Even flight simulators compete with the fact that you can steal a jet in Los Santos and fly it into the ocean for free without buying a separate game to do it. The lesson is not that GTA is unbeatable. It is that a game built around one mechanic now has to justify why it deserves to exist on its own when a bigger world already offers that mechanic as a side activity. That is the real challenge, facing genre-specific franchises going forward, and it is a problem money alone cannot fix, because Rockstar is not winning by spending more. It is winning by giving players more reasons to stay in one place and never open anything else. Think about how rarely a single-purpose game gets to stay single-purpose anymore. Sports titles are folding career modes into open worlds. Even survival games are adding heists and car culture of their own. The safest place for a genre to live now might be inside someone else's world instead of carrying an entire game by itself.